Hey, Rebuild family, welcome back to another episode. Listen, today we have joining us the brilliant and innovative and very, very smart strategist, Angela Burk. She is going to talk to us about all things midlife and probably some other things as well. So, Angela, welcome to the show.
What an intro. I think I need you just to introduce me every day, just every morning. Can you just, when I wake up, can you just introduce me to my day just like you
Right.
did? That would be amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to have you here, and I've done my homework. I read up on you. I followed you on social. Like, it's a whole thing. It's
It's
all
a
the
whole
things.
thing.
But what's in my brain won't be out. Tell everyone. Introduce yourselves.
I
Tell
will.
us who you are.
I will. So I'm Angela. I live in California. I split my time actually between here and Australia, which is a crazy story in and of itself. Because I met a man about 10 years ago who lives in Australia and I don't. But somehow we've made this relationship and blended family work. And I spent about 30 years in high tech B2B marketing, and I retired in late 2024. And I found a folder that I actually compiled when I was 35. And I had this idea for writing a book when I was 35. It was going to be called The Real Girl's Guide to Over 35 because I was struggling with a lot of just transitions. I was at a crossroads in so many parts of my life. And I was looking around and everybody just looked so shiny and perfect, like they had their stuff together. And like I was somehow the broken one. And the folder literally and figuratively got buried. And when I retired, I found the folder, is how this all happened. And I opened it and I thought, well, look at that. A lot of the same things that I had questions about then, I still do. I had a whole new list.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can write this book. So that's what I set out to do.
So, I mean, like, there's so many intersections here that I want to talk about, but the first one would be, the change of going from working to retired, even though I feel like you're saying you're retired, but I feel like you're still working.
I think you're right. Like, I think I retired for about 5 minutes. But yeah, it's a change for sure. And I
Yeah.
think for me, the big part of that change was, my whole a lot of my life, a lot of the stories that were deeply rooted and wired into me about who I was a worker, I was a fixer, I was a builder, I was a grinder, I was the one who got it done. And so a lot of my identity was wrapped up into my career, and not only just the jobs I had, but what I gave, what I bled in order to do those jobs. So the idea of retiring was a little bit odd and it was a little bit jarring because I thought, oh man, am I going to lose this part of my identity that I probably overinflated and over-indexed on? And how is that going to feel? And then also there's this idea of with that came financial freedom and security and a little bit of power. And so retiring meant I still had that I built, but also my partnership with my Australian man was going to take a slightly different form because I wasn't pulling in a paycheck every month. And how was that going to feel for me? So yeah, I was definitely a little like, ooh, this
Yeah.
is new. This is
Yeah.
new.
Well, I mean, so your marketing strategist life, B2B life, can you talk to us a little bit about that? How did you get started? What led you down this path? What got you interested in this type of career?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
So I went to college right out of high school and I didn't set out to be a marketer. Like that was not my aspiration. And I decided to pursue a bachelor's in business. And one of the classes that I took was a marketing class. And I took a marketing research class and really loved it. And I was really close to my professor. So that kind of got me thinking, okay, this marketing thing, maybe I need to explore a little bit about what that was. Because up till that point, I really thought marketing meant advertising. And I thought, ooh, I don't want to, in my mind, however many years ago, way too many years to count, I was like, oh, I'll just be writing ad jingles like that. I'm just going to date myself. Like I thought that was marketing.
Right.
So then I started to, the seed was planted. And then my senior year of my undergrad, one of my professors at the end of class stood up and said, "Hey, my wife works for a computer magazine. She's looking for a market research assistant. If anybody's interested, let me know." And I, like most things in my life, I kind of held back. I looked around because I was like, oh, she'll never pick me. Who am I to think I could do this job? So I held back. Mm-hmm. And at the end of class, nobody went to talk to him. So I, got my little books together, my little backpack, and I went and talked to him, and I interviewed, and she gave me my first job. And it was in market research. And then that just kicked off. I went from publishing to software. Then I was fortunate enough to land a position, always through people I knew, which I felt really good about, at a SaaS company. So, software as a service in the cloud space, and had no idea what that rocket ship was going to look like. And that just kind of guided me through some really amazing startups, Fortune 500s, early stage investment companies, later stage investment companies. And then this willingness that I had and this ability that I had to just be the person who got things done sort of gave me opportunities to just do a lot of things. And so that's kind of how my career evolved. So I wish I could say it was like this eloquent, well thought out, by design situation. And it became that as I was in it a little bit more, but a lot of it was kind of happenstance.
Yeah. I wonder if there was a moment that made you think it's time for me to retire. Like, it's time for me to pursue some other interests.
Yeah.
Like one specific moment.
Well, there were probably a culmination of moments. And I happened to be fortunate in that my Australian man built his own business. He sold his business. So the retirement carrot was dangled in front of me, with a lot of support, I'll say. But leading up to that, it was really interesting. So the last 3 years of my career, I spent taking on a part of marketing. It was called marketing operations, that I had spent exactly 0 years in prior. So it was completely and woefully uncomfortable for me. A brand new domain at a time in the company that I worked for's trajectory, which was a little bit tenuous. We were sort of really trying to diagnose and solve some revenue impacting problems. And here I was stepping into a role that sat at the epicenter of this, needing to build out a team from 8 people to eventually 32 people with no playbook on how to solve this problem. It was super uncomfortable for me. But I decided, in the years leading up to that, I sort of embraced this idea of discomfort, because it kind of gave me it lit the fire under me to kind of take some of these career risks. But in the course of doing this job, there were 2 moments that really kind of hit me. One was I was supporting a leader, and I was asked to write a communication about a promotion of somebody, a colleague. And, in all the ways that I sort of teach my 3 boys about how you show up just as humans, and how, if your process to get to an outcome is not great, you really can't call the outcome good. And if you're leaving collateral damage in your wake, and that could be in the form of work that other people have to do, it could be cutting people down, it could take a lot of forms, but you can't really call yourself a success if that's how you get there. And I was asked to work on this communication for somebody who modeled that bad behavior. And I was asked to do it, and I stepped away and I said, look, I need to take the weekend to think about this, because I'm being asked to do something that flies in the face of how I'm trying to parent my boys. And that's a real problem for me. So I came back on Monday and I said, look, I'll write everything else, but I'm not going to touch that part, because I can't. And so that was one moment where I thought, there was this deep conviction, and I was very vocal about where my boundary was. And I thought, if my boss or whoever's working on this thing doesn't like it, so be it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I get fired? Okay, cool. So I sort of was prepared, I was mentally releasing a lot of the expectations that were put on me, because I wasn't ready to compromise. I could not compromise myself in that way. And then there was one other meeting that I was in. This was kind of another moment where we were talking about employee engagement. And I'm sitting with peers in this meeting, and my employee engagement scores were great. They were like off the chart, higher than any of my peers. And so we're sitting in this meeting, and all we're doing is talking about why every other leader's scores were crap. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, you've got one person in the room who's clearly doing something right.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about, and you're giving time and space for people to make excuses. And do you know, in that meeting, I had visions. I played this out, Tiffany, in my head of me silently closing my laptop, taking my badge off and dropping it on the table and just walking.
Wow.
And I left, and I called my partner, and he's like, do you know how badly I wish you would have done it? Because you could have done it.
Right.
And that's when I realized, something has got to change. So retirement came. It was a blessing, but I knew in that moment I could not keep doing that work. I couldn't.
You know what's so interesting? I find that this happens often, and I'm maybe I'm a little, pie in the sky, rose-colored glasses, Kimmy Schmidt, maybe called Pollyanna, whatever reference you want to, whatever reference you want to come up with, maybe that's me. But because doing excellent work is so closely knit to like my core values and who I am really as a person, when I do excellent work and then there's a focus on all the other negative, bad, what didn't work, that just, oh my gosh, that just grinds my gears. It grinds my gears.
It grinds my gears, and it sort of reinforces this narrative that I kind of have no patience for anymore, which is, it's almost the proverbial, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil or whatever that thing.
Yeah,
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah,
but it's like, so the problems are going to get the floor time. And we're going to give the floor time to rationale and excuses and the blame game, instead of going, what's working really well? Everybody needs to figure that out. Like, let's start there. That should be the starting point. And and I didn't feel like it was, and it was really, really maddening.
Yeah. I noticed that it happens even in personal relationships. Like it's pervasive. It happens across, not just in business. I feel in friendships, it happens in friend groups, in casual relationships. Like there is this, just harping on what isn't working, as opposed to like, they should have been mining for what worked for you.
Correct.
Like
that's where we should have spent the time.
What worked? Yeah. Like that would have. There was a lost opportunity.
It was a lost opportunity, and it hit me like to my core, to the point where I said, I played the scenario out. I knew exactly where my backpack was. I had my badge, like I was holding my badge, which was connected to my pant loop, and I just quietly thought, all I need to do is shut the laptop, leave the badge, and walk out. And this scene played out. So I kind of knew, like, okay, we gotta start thinking about something different here. Yeah.
You knew you were like at that transitional point.
I was.
Were there any like things that you knew that you wanted to have before you made a transition?
Yes.
Like any must that you had for yourself personally, or not, it could be financially or not, but just things that, what were some of those things?
Yeah. I think, so I'll give you a couple of them, and they sort of fall on the dimension of, how I built my brand when it comes to work and my career. And, you invest 30 years into a huge portion of my life. I needed to go out with certain things set up. So there's that. And then there is a little bit of the financial piece. So I'll start with the first. It was really, when I took this role that was like woefully out of my domain, terrifying on a daily basis, talk about imposter syndrome. I felt it in almost every meeting on a daily basis. I knew that I embraced the discomfort, and I was going to dig in, and I was going to solve the problems. So there was no way. There were days that it felt really hard, and I thought, surely somebody can do this bigger and better and faster than I can. But I was not going to go out when things were messy. I was not going to go out when the problems weren't solved, because my brand, for better or for worse, my brand and how I viewed myself was, we don't quit. We don't quit when it gets hard, and we don't quit when it gets uncomfortable. So for me, it was really, really important to dig in and solve these really hard problems, to build an amazing team, to put in place new process, things that were sustainable, and to go out when things were like up and to the right, green and no problems. And I could claim my role in that. And that felt really good for me. So I wasn't going to bail if things felt messy. And I remember even telling my partner, like, he's like, look, you get to retire. And I said, look, if I'm not feeling like things are settled, then I'm going to work until they are. So that was one perspective. And there were things financially that were really important to me. I spent a good chunk of my working years as a single mother or as the primary financial provider in my family. So I took a lot of pride in bringing that to the table. And also, I think I probably had a slightly fear-based relationship with money, meaning like I needed to make sure that there was enough. But there was one element that was really important to me, and it was making sure I had enough money set aside, not only for my kids and their school, but also for my healthcare. Which is, it was a very real concern. It was like, okay, well, I'm this age, I can't draw down on Medi-Cal or Medicare until I'm this age. So how am I going to fund the difference? And so I needed that to me was like such a magic ingredient. And I think it was kind of rooted in some of the more like fear, kind of scarcity mindset that I think I carried when it came to money.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And I think there are millions of Americans, unfortunately, who are in the same predicament, and they're constantly thinking about, there's this trade of what they have to do in order to make sure that they're maintaining their health care. And, so that resonates, I'm sure, for so many people. Definitely resonates for me. I've definitely stayed somewhere, longer than I wanted to, because I'm like, I have excellent healthcare. Like, I cannot give that up. And on a whim. Oh, definitely not on a whim.
Totally. And for me too, because I carry my children, I provide their healthcare. Like, it was really important to me. And as a mom of 3 boys, I can tell you my boys are accident prone. We have winners in categories like the most number of bones broken, the most days in the hospital, the most stitches with one injury, the most stitches to the face. Like, we can keep the tally going. So it was really important to me. That healthcare thing was really important. And then also just making sure that I had whatever I defined as enough. Like, I wanted a cushion, and I didn't want this next phase of my life to be rooted with anxiety. I wanted to embrace this next phase and be steady and secure and feel rooted and grounded and solid. And the finances for me were a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I want to talk a little bit about how you have, or how you suggest people look at the changes that they're making in their life. Like, what are your recommendations for that right before we get into like the meat of the Real Girls Guide? Tell me a little bit about that. Like, do you have your own recommendations? Are there things that you did that you wish you didn't do?
It's a really good question. I think I'll start with kind of the mindset that I think some of us, I know me and a lot of the women that I talked to in the book, sort of have when it comes to change, right? Changes can sometimes denote a failure. And sometimes in our mind, different is bad, right? Like, somehow we're held to this rule book or a yardstick, usually self-inflicted, of, change meaning that we failed at something. And with that can come a sense of grief, right? You can grieve a lot of things. You can grieve a job loss or a career change. You can grieve an identity change. You can grieve, what was once a really loud house filled with kids to a very quiet house. You can grieve your appearance. You can grieve the life you thought you were going to live. And that comes with fear and embarrassment and shame and all these things. But the minute we can kind of instead maybe view change as being just that, it's different. And good things can come from different. That could help us acknowledge, we can feel these negative emotions, but let's acknowledge them, because then we can short circuit our way to acceptance, and then start to see and start to move. It's not about blowing up your whole life. It's not about, making these, 180s in every dimension, but it's about releasing some of those negative emotions. It's about acknowledging and getting to acceptance, and then making small steps towards something else. Because what I found in my own life, and what I saw echoed in the book, is often out of change comes something good. And when you're in it, it's really hard to see through it. And I think the reason is because of the relationship between change and like failure. And then, all of these negative things that are super real, for many of us to feel and experience. It's like, okay, we got to traverse that road quicker, and realize that, out of change can come good.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting the way that we sometimes frame failure. Most of the times we hate to admit it. We won't acknowledge it at all. And for many, many millions of people, they stay stuck in failure. Mm-hmm. They try something and it doesn't work, and it's like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm not going to try again. And to me, sometimes I think, imagine if, like the person who, realized that you could get water out of a well was just like, oh, just forget it.
First time I tried too hard. We're going to call that done.
Or babies walking. Forget it.
Forget it. I'm just going to
try again.
I think it's a really good point. And I think for some of us, I think having had the career experiences I had, the idea that, fast fail, right? Like that was the philosophy in some of these high performing, very high growth companies and marketing organizations. It's like, man, you've got to put something out there, you test it, you fail fast, you move on. What did you learn? You move on. So I had that from a work perspective totally ingrained in me. And I was able to look at some of those perceived, like, quote unquote failures, and sort of understand, like, there were lessons, like deeply rooted, important lessons that I gained out of each of those, again, quote unquote failures. So I had that. I was lucky to have that to kind of lean on a little bit through my career and kind of my work personas. And I do think that, we sort of, there's two paths, right? Like you can kind of get marred down in that and just go, I talk to women all the time, like, I'm too old to change now. And it's like, if not now, when? Like, and are you happy with this circumstance that you got going on? Like, if you're happy, then stay that. Just say, I'm happy with everything that's happening, but not that, I'm just too old to change. Because that feels very defeatist. It feels very sad, actually.
Absolutely.
And then you've got the other side, which are women like us who are sort of like, look, okay, cool. Things change. That can feel like a failure. Maybe it is. Like, what have I learned from that? What can I learn? What am I going to repeat, not repeat? And then what is the next action I'm going to take? Because I'm not satisfied here. I'm not going to sit here. I want more. I want different. And yes, it's scary. And yes, it's all these things, but something good will come out of the next step. So now what am I going to do? And so I see a lot of us, and especially in this midlife, sort of embracing this urgency in a way to kind of act and be a little dissatisfied with the current circumstance if we don't like it.
Right. Would you say that your ideas around midlife, has that contributed to you writing this book? What is it? I know you said you found the folder, but tell us a little bit about the process of starting to write the Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, Hot Takes, True Stories, and Fearless Advice.